pushing this around a little bit so we can be at the stove and.
Okay. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Maria.
How are
Hi,
you?
Kathleen.
Hi,
Hi, Maria.
Rob.
I just got the greens.
Wonderful. Okay, Kathleen, thank you so much for the vase.
Oh, good. Great.
Beautiful. I'll bring it up. I have it in the other room. I'll bring it up to the screen so everyone can see your beautiful pottery work. Oh my gosh.
I upsized you. I put them all out, but it was perfect.
Well, it's beautiful. Thank you so much.
No worries.
All right, Justin, I'll let you take over.
Cool. Thank y'all for being here. This is going to be our last cooking class with me, and I'm super stoked to get to have a little private kind of intimate session with y'all with one of actually one of my favorite things to make, which is sweet potato fritters. Really like all kinds of different fritters. I love making fritters. Or you can call it, sometimes they turn out to look more like a pancakey kind of thing, or, you know, different people call them different things, but I grew up calling them fritters. My mom would make like salmon patties, but zucchini patties. Maybe you want to call them patties. I'm calling them patties now. But these particular ones are made with sweet potato. And then in the recipe, I've got garbanzo bean flour as kind of our binder, where you would use like flour or breadcrumbs. If you don't have garbanzo bean flour, you can totally use other flours, other binders. I really like the garbanzo bean flour in it because you essentially are making like a beans and potato dish. So you're getting a lot of good protein and fats from the garbanzo beans, but also like a lot of really awesome slow release carbohydrates from the sweet potato. One of the things about sweet potato and white potatoes, especially in the AMOR kitchen, and just for like personal use and eating whatnot, you know, sweet potatoes are sweeter. They have a little bit more sugar content, but actually they are a longer, slower to digest food. So they have, it's almost like a slow release versus a white potato is like quick release, instant carb turned into sugars. So we use sweet potatoes pretty much all the time if we use any kind of potatoes in the kitchen. Sweet potatoes are also not really a potato. They're in the morning glory family. So they're just a tuber that's super similar to a potato. We're going to shred it. I have a hand shredder, but if you have like a food processor, you can shred your sweet potato in, you can do that. Whatever way you want to break it down into a size that will basically fry really easy and quick. I like making this dish for breakfast or lunch or dinner. Anytime really, but especially like if I have friends over for breakfast or like brunch kind of thing, and I'm like just got to throw something together, I usually always have sweet potatoes, so I can make this really fast. It's almost like pancakes, and you can literally just put maple syrup on them and they're delicious. But we'll do it with baked apples and make a little salad. So this is super like a springtime, sunny day, brunch, lunch, breakfast kind of dish, but you know, but it's plenty hearty enough to have as a dinner dish also. It's actually kind of reminiscent of a pork chop dish that I would make way back in the day at a restaurant I worked at, where pork chop with gold raisins and baked apples and walnut and some greens and stuff, but basically our sweet potato patty or the fritter is going to take the place of that meat substance. So we'll get started. So one thing that we'll get started on is first we'll make our dressing. So the dressing recipe is a really, really simple vinaigrette. It is one part oil, 1 part vinegar, 2 parts oil. So that's the reason we have, I believe, a 1/4 cup and then a 1/2 cup. So that means each part is a 1/4. So you can make that into any size dressing. If you want to do 1 tablespoon and 2 tablespoons, like 1 tablespoon vinegar, 2 tablespoons of oil, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, that's like a perfect size for 2 people. If you're doing just salad. But so we're going to do a little bit bigger size. So we're going to do the 1/4 cup and a 1/2 cup to make 3/4 cups total of dressing. And that is going to be half of it. 1/2 cup of that 3/4 cup is specifically going to be for roasting our apples. So some people might not realize that vinaigrettes are plenty usable for roasting vegetables or apples or fruits or really anything. If you put them on a piece of protein, even, they're amazing because of the vinegar is going to tenderize, and then the oil is going to kind of give it a crispy sear, and then you've got a lot of flavors going on in there also. So vinaigrettes are really great. So let's get started on the vinaigrette. It's basically, we're just going to take and put it all into our food processor or a blender, whatever you have that can emulsify the vinegar and the water with the seasonings. So vinegar and oil. That means it's going to combine them into like a really solid substance so that they don't separate. So let's go ahead and get started on that. And then we'll do our apples. And while our apples are roasting with the vinaigrette on them in the oven, we will then make our fritters, fry them up. And by that time, we'll be ready to dress our salad, put our crushed walnuts on with some herbs if you have any, or anything cool to top your salad with. And then our apples will be ready. So it's kind of everything will be ready at the same time. So the order will be dressing, roast apples, fry fritters, make salad, and plate everything. Real smooth like. So we'll go ahead and get your oven preheated to 350 degrees, as we'll be pretty quickly moving into getting our apples in there. Okay. So I have a really small little baby food processor that I use for all kinds of stuff, but for vinaigrettes, really quick, easy vinaigrettes. It's very awesome rather than having to pull out your whole blender. So if you ever get tired of that kind of thing, then you're like, oh, like I should get one of those little baby blenders. They're like a Ninja Bullet. Those are super awesome. But very simply, we are going to take our apple cider vinegar. If you don't have apple cider vinegar, you could also use like red wine vinegar. You could use a balsamic vinegar. I wouldn't really use a plain white vinegar. That would be pretty straightforward vinegar acidity with not a lot of flavor, which can be off-putting sometimes. Rice wine vinegar can work. And really any of those could work with this dish also. This dish is very versatile in like what flavor profile you put into it. So I'm just going to take and measure out my 1/4 cup of vinegar right here, pour it in. And then I'm going to do my 1/2 cup of oil. So each part of this recipe is a 1/4 cup. So we've got 1 part vinegar and then 2 parts oil. About like that. And then specifically for this one, so with your base recipe, just this with our salt and our pepper. So I'm going to crank a little bit of pepper in here.
Okay.
And then put your salt in. So this by itself is a just base vinaigrette. Now this is the recipe that we use, and you can remember this or write it down and use it as much as you want to add other things to. So we could put blueberries in here and make a beautiful blueberry vinaigrette, maybe add like a touch of lemon juice to it for like a nice citrusy blueberry vinaigrette. You can throw herbs into it. You could put like a bunch of oregano and it would be like an oregano vinaigrette. You could use balsamic and oregano. And that's something you might see on like a menu at a restaurant, like balsamic oregano vinaigrette. And it'll be kind of like a dark brown, but really thick. But today, since we're doing apples and sweet potato, we are going to do a maple syrup vinaigrette. So we've got our base vinaigrette here, which is the oil, vinegar, salt, and pepper. And then I've got a little bit of maple syrup right here. So I'm gonna put that in. And then also, since we're putting that sweetness in there, I'm just gonna take a little bit of lemon juice and put that in there also, just to give it a little balance in terms of citrus and sweet. And that's it. So we'll just blend that up. And so you really want to make sure you get it blended until it's like a nice white creamy look. Not creamy in terms of like thickness, but just consistent. You don't want it to separate at all, so that part of your stuff gets oil and part of it gets vinegar when you spread it onto your apples and then also your salad. So since we have that finished, how's everybody doing on vinaigrette? Got any questions on other cool things you could add to it? Everybody good? Okay. So let's get started on our apples. So I've just got this is a red gala apple, which is one of my favorite apples. You could really use any kind of apple in this dish, but ones that are a little bit sweeter, such as like this gala or like a Honeycrisp, are super awesome for roasting because they have a little bit of extra sugar in them that will kind of caramelize and crisp up a little bit. But even like a Red Delicious is great. Green apples, you could do pears, fruit. So I feel like some people, or even myself, will just forget how great a roasted stone fruit or like a roasted apple or a pear, like a hearty fruit, can be. If you just give it a nice roast and get those sugars going and add a really cool kind of fruit note to your dinner. So I'm going to leave the skin on my apples. I like the skin. If you don't like skin, you can take it off. When you roast it, the skin is going to not necessarily get crispy because we're not going to cook them that long at a high heat, but they will cook a little bit and get a little bit easier to chew, but they will have like a pretty like toothy texture. It's a ton of really good fiber in the dish, but if you don't want your skin, then sure, whatever, peel it off. But we're going to cut these into quarters and then cut those quarters in half to give basically like a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch thick piece of apple, all the way around wedged up. So let's see, I'll put my camera here and I'll show you how I cut apples. Let me move this real quick. So a really easy way to cut your apple is you have the center, and instead of trying to like kind of cut around the center like this, you can put your apple straight down like it's sitting up like it normally would on your cutting board. And then don't cut straight through the middle and then go back in through afterwards and cut out your like seed stuff. Go off center to the right just a little bit to where you don't think you'll hit seeds or the center, the core of the apple. So like here would be the center. I'm gonna move over just to here. So I'm gonna cut that side off just all the way through. So you can kind of see like I got a little bit of it in there, but that's all edible. And then I've got this left over here. And then so I'm just gonna take and spin the apple around and do the exact same thing. And then do each side like that too. So I basically already cut the core out. like that. And I don't have to go back through my apple and cut out any seeds. And then from there, we're just gonna cut these pieces about like this size. They'll be nice and soft once they're roasted, but if you cut them too small, they'll just kind of turn to mush, more like something you might want to make an apple pie out of. But we want to have a little bit of texture. And you can do the same with your other pieces. So these are looking about like this size. Right. And get a bowl, something that you can mix your apples in, or you can just go ahead and put them straight onto your pan that you're going to bake them on. For me personally, I really like to put it in a bowl and then put my seasoning or vinaigrette or sauce onto the apples so that I really make sure I get an even coat on them. Whereas when I put them on the pan and then mix them up, sometimes they will not get as evenly mixed up, or like one side won't get as much seasoning on it. So with this, I want to do a half cup to a quarter cup. Since I'm cooking for just me and a friend, we're just going to have one apple. But if you had 2 apples, I do half a cup of your vinaigrette. I'm just going to do a quarter cup here and just pour it right on. And then take a spoon or your hands or whatever you want. And just mix it up. And just like anything else you're ever seasoning or cooking, whether it's rice or apples or a bean or anything at all, you just want to try and make sure you get the seasoning on every single piece, on every single side, and every single pour. Sometimes like apple slices will stick together. You want to make sure you bust those up so that it gets on everything. So I got that. My oven is about preheated, my toaster oven. Thanks.
Justin, what are you heating your oven at?
350.
Okie doke.
And even if it's not all the way at 350 yet, it's okay. Because it's just apples. And we're just kind of par baking them. Par baking means like we're not cooking them all the way through until they're super soft. We're just cooking them to start the cooking process on the apples in terms of getting them soft and crispy, but not cooking them down into like squishy apples. Okay. So you got your apples on your pan, spread them all out so that they're not on top of each other. About like that. You should have a good bit of dressing kind of residual on the bottom. That's good. In about 5 to 10 minutes, we will take and flip these apples and check them and just make sure that they're cooking well. But flipping them to ensure we're cooking both sides of the apple. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop these in the oven. And there you go. Now, if you want to set a timer, feel free. I would set it for 7 minutes. That's when we'll check and flip the apples over. But another kind of thing built into this recipe is that I'm going to shred sweet potato and make my sweet potato batter, the fritter batter, together. When that's done, it should take about 5 to 7 minutes to make that batter together. And you want to let the batter sit for at least a couple minutes to kind of coagulate, especially using flax egg, which we are using in place of real eggs. That will just help everything hold together so much better. And the timing of it will coordinate perfectly with our apples. Everybody ready? All right, so shredding sweet potato. If you've got a food processor to do it, hooray for you. I don't think Maria does. You find yours? Does anybody else? We're going old school. Full on shredder right here. So you do want to skin your sweet potatoes. Unless you've got some like really, really amazing organic sweet potatoes that have a really soft, tender skin, and also haven't been growing in not organic soil. The skin is a part of the plant that one is got tons of really good nutrients for being in contact with the dirt, but also if it's not organic, it is usually the area that accumulates the most contact with pesticides and stuff. So I always kind of preach that on carrots and sweet potatoes. We're so used to peeling them all the time because that's normal. But if we forget that if that is actually grown correctly in the best kinds of ways, you can totally leave the skin on, and it's so good for you. And it's got tons of those vitamins that we need, as well as fiber. So I'm gonna go ahead and skin my sweet potato right here. Real quick, I've kind of cut my sweet potato down to a smaller size, but we're still gonna do about 1.5 cups of this. Sweet potatoes, my two favorite foods are bananas, number 1, and sweet potatoes are number 2. But I like to just bake them. I usually always have a couple baked sweet potatoes in my refrigerator. So I just bake a bunch of them at the same time. They're almost like candy bars for me. If everybody's ever like, man, I wish I had some kind of cool snack to just like have in the refrigerator all the time. You just cut a sweet potato in medallions and then put this vinaigrette on it and roast them like that, covered. Boom, you've got like little sweet potato candy bars. Even some orange juice or grapefruit in there as well is really good. Okay, got my sweet potato. Now we're gonna shred it.
Where is a teen volunteer when you need one?
Yeah, this is usually the job of teen volunteers. I usually tell them that we have a food processor that does the shredding for them after they've done at least one time of hand shredding. Yeah. Or if they cut themselves. It's very easy to cut yourself when you're shredding on a hand shredder, so be careful. Don't catch your knuckles or slip or anything like that. Yes, this is where we need a teen volunteer. Where's my assistant? Oh, man, mine's messing up. Funny, Rob, I also, right before we got started, went outside and picked a bunch of greens and herbs for my salad from my garden. What kind of lettuce did you get?
Oh, we're growing some nice red lettuce and freckled lettuce and spinach and kale and mesclun.
Nice.
Have a nice little greens garden, raised
Cool.
bed.
The mesclun would be real good with this. Or I love having all that kind of stuff too, because I usually pick like one leaf off of each one and
Yeah.
combine them all together.
I know,
Yeah,
if
that's what I do.
you- if you can see this one, it's called freckled,
Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful.
freckles.
Yeah, it's like
So
butter
cool.
roast.
So I got this stuff,
Oh,
which
that's
is blood sorrel,
Oh,
but it's got like red purple veins.
cool.
yeah.
I'll have to try
And
that one.
then I got some Swiss chard, which actually I planted this like last fall and it never came up, and then it just came up this spring. And then I've got some herbs. I got anise hyssop,
Ooh,
this pretty
Yeah.
purple flower. But I'm waiting on some other stuff. My kale and stuff I didn't get in the ground until recently.
Yeah, mine's still coming along. I had mesclun that made it all the way through the winter and it's flowering now.
Nice. You can eat the flowers.
Putting out seeds, so I'm letting it do its seed thing.
I had a lot of wildflowers that I planted last year that were edible reseed themselves too. It's been really neat to kind of like let the garden do its own thing. I have a bunch of sunflowers that are coming up that I didn't realize, or I didn't think about them being like reseeding themselves either. Okay, let's see how much of this I got.
My 7-minute timer just went off.
Well,
mine too. I just stirred them up and flipped them over a little.
Okay.
all right. Good thing we set a timer because we started talking. Let's check your apples and flip them over.
Sounds good.
Good.
I did. Ooh, pepper and salt.
So you can kind of see mine are starting, or maybe yours are too, but they're starting to get just a little bit of golden color on one side. They're starting to smell really good too. But we'll flip them over and then bake the other side for a little bit. And then we'll flip them over one more time to get the other side extra crispy. Or not, I mean, I keep saying crispy. It's not going to be like crunchy crispy, but just like browned a little bit. And also cooked all the way through. I think that I'm about done with my sweet potatoes. How y'all doing with your shredding sweet potatoes?
Good.
Good?
Done. We should add a little flour to it.
Another 7 minutes?
Yes, 7 more minutes.
Gotcha.
This is what we add. We're gonna make the patties. And so here, you can read this. We're gonna make sweet potato, et cetera, but then it's gonna be on a flat bottom pan, heat up the oil over medium heat. So I got the griddle out.
Okay. So let's move on to making our fritter dough. And also make sure you take your dressing and set it to the side so that we can use it later. So you've got your shredded sweet potato, which I have here. I've got 1.5 cups shredded sweet potato. You bet you'll kind of notice that one sweet potato in terms of shredded sweet potato goes a long way.
That ended up just being half of a sweet potato for me.
Right.
Me too.
So I was like, one sweet potato is probably
Shocked.
plenty.
Yeah.
Thick and pasty, wouldn't it? Don't you think? Well, yeah, just a little, otherwise they're not gonna stick together.
Okay, so you got your sweet potato. Put that in there. One thing to kind of take notice of, especially in terms of like this recipe, you could totally use like zucchini or squash, or a different like hardy root vegetable even. But each different vegetable has a different water content, right? So if you did this with white potatoes or Yukon Golds, they're going to have probably more water content than these sweet potatoes do. You kind of notice that the sweet potatoes are relatively dry. They might even have like a little bit of white starchy kind of liquid on some of them, or when you cut it, you see that white drops come out sometimes. That's starch. So part of what we're going to continue to do right here is work on how we perceive our texture inside the dish. So this, when we get finished with it, we want it to be a like holdable patty on ball that will turn into a patty. It'll keep its form, but it's not going to be so solid that it just stays as a ball in our, and when you put it on the pan or in our hand. We don't want it to like run like a pancake, but we do want it to be a little bit soft. So I think, you know, maybe even like a hamburger patty, it's like malleable kind of way it moves. That's a good example if you've done that before. If you don't do hamburger patties, then thicker than a pancake,
Those are done.
but not all the way into like a garbanzo bean patty for hamburger replacer kind of deal. So we've got our sweet potato here. The next thing we're going to add is our flour. So if you got garbanzo bean flour, awesome. Or you can use a couple other different things. You can use really any kind of flour that you'd like to use. Now, if you switch flours, just remember that that's going to kind of change the way that the thickness of your patty is going to be. So if you're using garbanzo bean flour to make a garbanzo bean pancake, and for that to thicken is like a 1-to-1 ratio, liquid to water. So garbanzo bean is going to get thicker a lot quicker than say if you only used white flour. If you did equal parts white flour to water and you tried to fry that in a frying pan, it's probably just going to turn into a big mess. So if you're using regular flour or almond flour, I'm actually going to use semolina flour, because I just happen to have some and I wanted to see how semolina flour works with this dish since I've never used it before. It's just a more heartier, not quite as finely powdered flour that's used for making pasta, actually. So, yes.
Just, you put in there on the recipe that you could use mashed garbanzo beans instead of the chickpea.
Yes, totally. Yeah, so I have a can here to kind of show you what you can do with that also.
Great, because that's what I do.
Awesome.
I do have coconut flour and almond flour, but I just wanted to see how you do this.
Yeah, let's do that. So with garbanzo beans, you'll still need like a little bit of flour of some sort.
Okay.
To be like a binder in it. Like a garbanzo beans will totally bind it, but garbanzo beans wet like this are going to it's hard to get them to be your binder, because if you puree them, they turn to like a hummus texture. If you crush them with your hands, they don't really ever get fine enough. And I like to crush them with my hands in this dish. So if you got your garbanzo beans, we'll go over the garbanzo bean portion first, and then we'll go into flour. So just as we do this part of the recipe, just remember every step is changing the viscosity, the thickness, how much liquid to solid ratio. And that's all we're really trying to do, is to get to a nice solid ratio of liquid to solid. So if you got a can or cooked garbanzos, just go ahead and strain them out. So since we've got a 1.5 cups of sweet potato, and the garbanzo bean flour is, I believe it was 3/4 cup garbanzo, correct?
Uh-huh.
I would do a 1/2 cup of garbanzo beans. If you did 3/4 cups, it's just going to be so much that you're going to have to add so much flour to get it to bind. So we'll do a 1/2 cup of garbanzo beans. So I got one here, and what? Sorry, before you put them into this bowl, I'm going to put them into this bowl.
My Apple timer went off.
Nice. Let's check them out. All right, how's y'all's apples look?
Pretty good.
Did anybody leave the skin on?
I did.
Yeah.
Do you kind of see how the skin around the edges of the apples is starting to change colors?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good. So
Yeah.
I'll kind of bring one up. You might be able to see it here, but basically your apple skin should get like lighter in color first as it starts to cook. And then right around the edges, you'll see it almost start to shrivel a little bit and get a little bit darker. So that's when it's actually starting to kind of caramelize those carbs. They're turning those into sugars. Your apple skin at that edge should start getting a little bit drier instead of being like wet, which is perfect. And I smell really good. I'm just going to flip mine over and let them go for a little bit longer so that the other side can kind of get to that same drier consistency.
They smell so good.
Oh yeah. We're about to come into like actual true apple season too. So keep this in mind if you ever just like, what should I do? Like if you had had apples like this, just you could do a bunch of apples and then store it away, put it in every salad you have for a while. Cold baked apples are delicious. Eat it for dessert, eat it for breakfast, eat it for lunch, or whatever you want. Eat it with ice cream, eat it with a steak, eat it with garbanzo beans, eat it with a salad. Let's see. Okay, garbanzo beans. So I've got my garbanzo beans here. You can mash these with a fork. You could squish them with your hands, your fingers, whatever you would like to do. But at the end of the day, the easiest thing is to put them in a food processor and pulse them. I don't want to like turn them into a puree like hummus, but I do want to get them really nice and broke down. I'm just going to do that real quick. So about like this consistency, you kind of see this. It's almost like millie. Should be really like chunky, but small chunks. And all the skin should be broke up. So that's the most important part, is the skin on the garbanzo beans is what will keep your patty from sticking together. But if you have that skin broke up, like in the food processor, or if you chop them or smash them with a fork, then they will actually help hold it together. So just take that that 1/2 cup of garbanzo beans, go ahead and put it in. If you've got garbanzo bean flour, you can go ahead and put that into the sweet potato tray. If you are using regular flour, I would start with a 1/2 cup of flour. Or I'm sorry, just start with 3/4 cups, the same amount as the garbanzo bean flour. the more important part with not using garbanzo bean is going to be like slowly adding your liquid in as you mix it so that you can see how much liquid you need to add. Same for using this garbanzo bean mash and then using a different kind of flour. So every step of the way, we're gonna mix as well as possible. So go ahead and mix that flour or your beans in with your sweet potatoes really well. To really break up that shredded sweet potato, especially so that it's like a nice even mix. Something about like that. Next, this process, if you notice, is kind of like baking, where we're going to do all our dry ingredients and then we'll add our wet ingredients. Next is going to be our egg replacer. So I've got flaxseed meal, so ground flaxseed. If you're using just normal flaxseed, you really need to like buzz those into powder so that they'll actually kind of stick and form. Flax seeds don't digest in your stomach also unless they're broke down into a powder. So you want to do the equivalent of 2 flax eggs. 1 flax egg is equal to 1 tablespoon of flaxseed, like these, and then 2 tablespoons of water, or your 2 tablespoons of water, which in this recipe I just have added into our broth.
But this is in place of the egg.
Also, something really cool, if you ever have it or see it, you can use is this stuff, which is Bob's Red Mill Egg Replacer. It is excellent at binding things together like these fritters. And you can just kind of throw it into anything that you're trying to bind. Even if you were doing like a casserole, it really, like a vegan casserole without cheese or egg, a lot of times will just fall apart. But this stuff mixed in will really hold it all together.
Justin, what is in that?
Yeah, I'll read the ingredients, but essentially it's just starches, potato starch, tapioca flour, baking soda, and psyllium husk.
Huh.
So psyllium husk is like an excellent fiber. It's husk fiber, but it's really, really good for its gelling quality.
Huh.
It almost has like a gelling kind of thing. So in this, you've got starches and then something that gels.
Right.
Those things combined together create like essentially like an egg whites.
Cool.
Also, you might see like psyllium husk is used a lot in natural health stuff for stomach issues. If you lack fiber, or if you're trying to like clean your stomach out, you'll take a pretty big dose of psyllium husk in water, and it will push everything out. So that flaxseed or your egg replacer, mix that in really, really good with your garbanzo bean flour, your flour and sweet potato mix. Okay. Since I used garbanzo beans, I'm going to take and do a 1/2 cup of flour in mine. So Kathleen, if you're doing coconut flour, that one's a little bit softer and thinner than the flour that I'm using. So I would go more like a 1/2 cup of flour. And then Maria, if you're using, what kind of flour are you using? All-purpose organic flour. I'll do a 1/2 cup of that also.
It's too late.
How much did you do?
I did the 3/4. So
That's fine.
It seems a little dry.
Well, we haven't put any liquid yet.
Okay, so that's okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
We might have to adjust once we add the liquid.
Bad student.
That's
but that's okay.
If I choose almond flour instead of coconut, that's the, is it still a half cup?
Yes, still use a half cup. Now you want to, again, like just make sure you mix that in really, really well.
Okay.
No clumps.
I'm having trouble with my flaxseed. I had whole flaxseed, and it doesn't seem to be chopping in my little mini food processor,
Mm.
but I'll keep at it.
Do you have a mortar and pestle?
I do. Try
That
that.
works. That will work as long as it like kind of breaks them a little bit. That works really well. They still will gel and like bind in your mix, but just not nearly as well as ground, and it can't mix in it quite as good. Also, if you have a blender, you can use a blender, but you have to put a lot of flaxseed in to cover the blade.
Now, when you did the flax, I shouldn't have put water in it or anything. I was just grinding up the flaxseed, right? In my
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that they look a little ground, but not much.
Now, if you're putting it into a little food processor, you can go ahead and take your broth and blend it with your flaxseed. So that'll help the flaxseed mix up, because it's just in there by themselves. They're too small and like just settle in the bottom to really get buzzed.
So do the whole half cup of veggie broth, or do just a little at a time?
Yes, do a whole cup, or the half cup,
Half cup,
and then blend your flaxseed in with it.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. Because that's why they won't get blended up, is because they just sit at the bottom. But in liquid, they'll totally get blended.
Yeah.
Cool. Everybody doing good?
Yep.
Okay,
All right. So let's see. I'm going to go ahead and put my salt, my pepper, and my cumin. So that'll be the last of my dry ingredients in with my
What's supposed to be going on with our apples?
apples. Oh yeah, we didn't reset our timer.
I set it for 5, but that was about 2 minutes ago.
So you want to check them out?
Ooh, they're nice.
Look good?
Yeah.
yep, they're done.
I need about 5 more minutes. But if you've got, if they're starting to get a little bit brown, the skin's starting to shrivel a little bit, I would take them out. They are good to go. Mine need just a little bit more, so I put mine on 5 more minutes. Yeah, everybody, if you're using a normal oven, it should be done. They should be completely done. Okay, so salt, pepper, and then I chose cumin as a kind of like my extra seasoning added into the fritter. So 1 teaspoon of cumin, or if you want, just a couple dashes. Now you could also put other things in now if you want. You could put like allspice or cinnamon. Any kind of seasoning that you like, really. You could even do a spicy version. Or we've got this maple apples kind of thing going. So we're going to do a little bit of cumin, salt and pepper, keep it simple. So again, give that a little mix. Always keeping everything nice and evenly mixed together. All right. And then let's go ahead and do our half cup of broth. Okay. Mix that together. Now it should start getting a little bit sticky. And I'll just say it all the time, but always remembering that we want that moisture on every single piece of stuff in the bowl. So really kind of take and break up your mix. I'm like almost like mashing mine together to ensure that everything gets mixed up real good. And mine is looking like really great in terms of consistency. I might have to add a little bit of flour, but basically, so you can kind of see it. When I press it up in the side, it moves back down together, but it does real slow. So it holds its form, but it does have some viscosity to it. So in terms of it being in my hand, I can take it. I can make a ball out of it, but it does kind of like shake into a little patty. If everybody can see that consistency. So mine's just a little bit thin. I want it to hold together a little bit more. So I'm just going to shake a little bit of flour, probably like it's half a tablespoon to a tablespoon more. And then give that a mix. So like if, depending on what flour you used, use your own judgment, trust yourself. Add a little bit more flour if you need to. If it's too thick, then add a little bit of water. But even with the garbanzo bean flour, if you know, sometimes different garbanzo bean flours can be different thicknesses or just the way that they're cooked and ground. So always taking your own notion of trusting yourself and how the recipe looks and is supposed to work. Sometimes recipes can be a little bit different. So that's like, this is looking real good for me. Kind of see that.
It's better, doesn't it? Yeah.
How's y'all's in terms of how thick it is or thin?
Getting there.
It's getting there. I don't know.
Getting there. That looks pretty good.
Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that looks pretty good.
We used garbanzo beans and we had to add quite a bit of flour.
You use whole garbanzo beans also?
Right, we did. But I think we mashed them up too much.
Oh, that's okay. So that's the thing is now you just know that you can take that, and even if you mash them up, what you say too much, you can just kind of alter it and it's still going to come out really good. That's why like fritters are so awesome. No matter what you have, you can always kind of fix it at the end, whether you're adding a little bit more liquid or a little bit more flour, a little more binder.
There we go.
Cool. So let's get our pan heated for frying. I'm going to use coconut oil. You could also use olive oil, grapeseed oil, whatever oil you'd like to use. Just make sure that we're going right at like a medium heat. And before you drop your fritter dough into the pan and the oil have to be hot or your fritter will just stick.
Okay.
That's kind of like the trick. So I'm going to go ahead and turn mine on. I'm going to get a little bit of oil in my pan, probably about a tablespoon. It's got to be enough to cover the whole bottom and have just like a little bit of thickness to it so that your fritter actually fries in the oil while it's cooking. The thickness of the fritter probably be like you want to do something like this, almost like a little hamburger patty, but like a little bit smaller. If you go too big,
You see this?
they will just kind of fall apart in the middle. But if you do a size like about like this, it's a lot easier for them to sit in the pan and be flipped over. So it also looks cooler to have like 2 or 3 small ones on your plate rather than have like one giant one that falls apart and is like soggy. So I really like making these smaller ones. They're way cuter. I'll put that back. Get a little bit of oil in my pan. So I'm going to move our camera over here so you can see. Okay.
What do you want to do?
Now, in terms of the heat of your pan, low and slow is better than hot and fast. If you do too hot and too fast, then your fritter will get like, cooked all the way through on one side, and you'll flip it and it'll cook all the way on the other side, but then the center will not get cooked at all. You go low and slow, still hot enough to where it can get nice and seared. You don't want it to just sit in soggy oil. You ever fry something that just comes out soggy? It's because your heat was too low. Same as if it comes out crispy and burnt, it's too high. So you want to find the perfect medium. One of the ways that I tell if my hot oil is hot enough is I get a teeny tiny bit of water on my finger, and then I do this. If it kind of like pulses up like that real quick, it's ready. If it really pops, then it's way too hot. But if it doesn't do anything at all in terms of like a little sprinkle of water, then it's too cold. So mine is like perfect. I'm gonna get my fritter dough right here. See this little ball? I'm just going to press it just a little bit. I'm not going to press it all the way into its full thickness, because when I put it in the pan, I will press it and it will spread out even more. But the easiest way to do this is to take your spatula, put it on the spatula, and then slowly kind of press it into the oil. As soon as you get it in there, kind of shake your pan a little bit, even like lift up the sides. Move your oil around so that the oil is frying the bottom. Scoot your fritter back and forth in the oil. Once you get like a nice sear and it's kind of scooting around in your oil like this, that means it's not going to stick. You put it in there and just leave it, it probably will just stick. I'm going to go ahead and get a couple more fritters in my pan. All right, so I'm going to do this exact same thing. Put it on my spatula, scoot it down into the oil, immediately get it moving a little bit. Now, if you notice, I haven't squished them yet. I'm just letting this one side get nice and cooked. There we go. While those are searing up in your pan, you can clean up a little bit. Make sure you kind of come back and move them. Make sure they're not sticking. It also helps if there's a hot spot in the pan, and get your heat evenly distributed across each part. So I turned my heat down a little bit and it got too low. They stopped really frying, so I'm gonna turn mine back up a little bit, because it should continue to kind of have a very light sizzle while it's in the pan. How's everybody's frying process going? Good?
Good. Justin, I missed it. Did you already flip?
I did not flip yet.
Okay, so you just let them chill.
Yeah, I'm letting them chill. I'm like really trying to let the bottom get fully crisped up,
Okay.
as well as to start cooking the inside just a little bit. If you flip too early, they just fall apart. So you can kind of, if you can hear or see that, you can kind of see around the edges. Mine are starting to get nice and crispy. So they're I'm coming real close to time to flip. If you start seeing your edges start turning brown, that means it's time to flip. So in the most careful way I can, because these are pretty flimsy, might want to even take a spoon. Like I just quickly grab my spoon from my batter, put your spatula under and like kind of help it onto your spatula. Take it all the way out. And then as easy as you can, kind of up against your edge of your pan, flip it over. And so this is kind of what they look like so far.
Yours are much browner.
Much browner.
Yeah.
Yeah, ours aren't that brown. Well, ours are. Yeah, ours are brown, yeah.
So just if you're already flipped and it's not quite that brown, maybe turn your heat up just a little bit. Let the other side get that brown and then flip them back over.
There, they're making sense.
How's that?
And when you flip them also, like make sure that you move them around a little bit, because remember that side isn't cooked yet, so it can still stick. Having the right amount of oil, enough oil to coat your pan and the whole bottom of the fritter is what kind of gives it that crispy brownness also.
Yeah.
So on the second flip, when it's flipped down this way, is when they actually sit in the pan for even longer to make sure that it cooks all the way through the center of your fritter. So while we're waiting, we can go ahead and get our salad ready and put it on our plate, because as soon as these are ready, the best time to eat them is right when they come out of the pan. As soon as they come out of the pan, it's when they're most delicious. The longer they sit, the more cold they get and kind of like thick.
Can you keep them in the oven at a low temperature to keep them warm?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
My eating partner's not here yet.
Yeah, even like finishing them in the oven, the way you might do like a piece of fish sometimes, like you sear one side, flip it over, and then finish it in the oven.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of think about it in that same manner, because that's just how you get the inside to cook all the way through real evenly. But yeah, you can totally put them on a pan, put them in the oven at really low heat. I even just turn it on the light / like the lowest 200 and cover them with tin foil, and then pop them back in the pan. Like right when you go to put them on the plate, you can just kind of give them a little quick fry, like 15 seconds on each side, and it'll kind of redo that really nice crispy dill on the outside. It'll be delicious.
Good. Did you only have 2 patties, or do you have another set to throw?
I have more dough,
Okay.
but I'm not cooking for only 2 people, so. Okay. Y'all wanna, let's see. My fritters are still doing good. I kind of cut the temperature down just a little bit so that they could stay in the pan a little longer. But they're still got a nice sizzle going on. Kind of get a visual on how crispy they are. And I'm going to go ahead and start doing my salad. So my salad is some spinach. And then I've got a little bit of rainbow chard right here, which I got out in my garden I showed earlier. And then I've got a little bit of this blood sorrel. I even got a little bit of mint. This is mountain mint. It's like a really hardy mint. And then I've got a little bit of this anise hyssop. So every time I make salad, I always just kind of throw, even if I just have plain romaine lettuce, I always try and throw in some extra herbs. And I don't think about it a whole lot. I just throw in whatever herbs I have. One, super fresh, add all these extra pops of flavor and whatnot, but they're also really, really great for digestion. Really help kind of think of them almost like scrubbing bubbles for your intestines. But I'm gonna make my salad in my bowl. I'm actually making this in a bowl because I thought it would be really pretty. So I'm gonna get that set up right here. Are y'all have pans big enough to do all your fritters? Are you doing 2 rounds of fritters?
We did, we cut the
Just
recipe in half.
Awesome.
pan.
We're all doing one. Cool.
I'm doing 2 rounds, but how do you redo? Like what's, when you rewarm them? Or should I just leave my fritters for another day? The ones that aren't cooked. Could I put those in the fridge and do them tomorrow for something else?
Oh yeah, definitely. So
Do they work better that way?
many times when I do this, I'll make it in the morning for breakfast or like it's more like typically something I do on a day that I wake up a little later. Maybe I don't have to wake up and do something. So I've got time to make myself sweet potato fritters for breakfast. It always turns out to be like more than what I can eat by myself. So I'll take whatever's left over and I'll use it for lunch. But instead of making a patty, I'll just kind of scramble it into a hash. You can eat it like that. You can bake it even into almost like a loaf. It's really just like a dough. So you can keep it and save it for probably up to like 5 or 6 days before you cook it again.
Okay, cool.
Shoot, you could even like make patties of it and then freeze the patties.
Oh. Nice.
All right, so I'm gonna go back into my pan and flip my patties back over. Oh yeah. So I'll show you, this is how I really like mine to be. This really nice, dark, crispy. It's not burnt, it's not black. It's just like really nice and crispy.
Mine turned out a lot browner the second side.
Nice, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that, when you flip them back over, you could even just kind of turn the heat on low until we're ready to put them on, or just turn it off. But if you just put it on low, that other side will get a little bit crispier and cook and kind of just dry out what not dryness it has in there, the liquid. Y'all ready to do some salad and a little bit of plating?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, let's do it. So you want to dress your salad in, you can do it in whatever, if I don't know what your plating is, but I like to dress my salad outside of the plate. So I'm going to take a bowl on the side. I'm going to take a little bit of my spinach. I really love hand ripping my greens. So I just rip mine in half and I'll leave it pretty big so that I have to chew. Slows down how fast I eat because I tend to eat really fast. And also just encourages chewing, which is really necessary. So I put my spinach in here, and then I like to add any like other leafy greens like this sorrel, kind of rip it up.
No, this is better.
So since I have chard, I like to take the stems, rip them off, but don't throw them out. They're really good if you chop them up super small. It's almost like a little garnish, and they're also pink and pretty. So I'm gonna set those to the side. Because I'm always like, how can I use every single piece? I'll take my chard, I'll rip it in half, and then kind of just give it a light rip like that too. Take some of my dressing. I wouldn't pour all the dressing because it should be a 1/4 cup. That's a lot of dressing for one person. Or two or three people. Dress your salad. About right here. Mix it up before putting it on the plate. About like that. And then come back down here. Take your plate or your bowl. I've got these really pretty bowls that I'm going to use for mine.
Yeah, the fritters are great.
What's that?
The fritters are great.
He's already eating.
Ah, nice. So I put those there. How is it?
Oh, they're excellent.
Cool. Patties. Like to put them in the middle. Up against my stuff. Then I'll take my herbs, which are these beautiful anise hyssop flowers. I'll take the leaves off, sprinkle them on top. They'll just be really cool punches of flavor. And then the flowers are also edible. So I'm going to sprinkle these flowers on here. Save a little bit for your apples. Take your apples, put those in. Don't forget about your walnuts also. So I've got your apples in there. I'm gonna sprinkle the rest of these flowers on top of the apples. Oh gosh, I didn't even think about how good anise hyssop and apples are gonna be. I'll take one extra flower just for be pretty. Put it in like this. And then I've got my walnuts right here. I'm gonna give them a little bit more of a crush than they are, but you kind of like look at this dish, you're like, wow, that's great. And you'll eat it and be like, wow, that's okay, it's nice. But the one thing it's missing is something crunchy. So we've got like soft, we got fried, we got crispy, we've got sweet, we've got chewy greens and stuff. Now we also have some serious awesome texture like that. And that is my dish.
Yum, yum.
Yeah.
Yes.
How is everybody else's?
Good.
Good. Awesome.
Look up here.
Nice. How do you like the apples?
Oh,
They're
great.
wonderful. They're delicious.
Cool. Maria, Kathleen, are y'all still doing all right?
I was shoving my face with an apple.
I'm not talking because I'm just eating apples.
There's mine.
Beautiful.
I'm not putting the fritters yet because Phil's not ready to eat, but
Come on, Phil, get it together.
I think they look really good.
Oh, they look awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
see mine? Can you see it?
Put it-
I never can do this right.
Oh,
There we
oh, a
go.
little too late. Almost.
Wait, here. What do I do? Do I have to flip it around?
No,
No, I can see
Kathleen.
you.
Kathleen, put it right in front of your face.
Okay.
and tilt it down.
Maria.
Maybe not, that was too high.
I knew that was gonna happen.
Okay, I'll try again. How about this?
There you go.
There.
Oh, they look
Yes.
awesome.
And that's
very
the one
cool.
that fell.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
The very pretty. Beautiful. I'll have to take a shot. I mean camera. I think my iPad's going. Okay. Beautiful.
Cool. Good job, everybody.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah.
I had to do this with you. See your sweet face one more time, just
One
in
more
case.
time. You'll see it again.
I actually feel like Justin will be part of our guest chef series in the fall. So
Yeah.
not
Cool.
going, he's not going too far.
Yeah, but oh, my lighting's so weird.
Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is great.
Wonderful.
Enjoy your dinner, and thank you to Justin. We will certainly miss him gracing us every month, but he's always part of the team. So
Yeah.
we'll look forward to see where his journey takes him next. And we will pick up again with cooking classes in the fall. And so Rob and Pam, we hope to see you again.
Yes, come and see us.
Okay, awesome.
Awesome.
And otherwise, thank you all so much. Go ahead, Kathleen.
No, thank you so much. This is fun. I love this. I mean, I of course could cook this without, but I like this format because I don't get to cook with people, not
Right.
come to AMOR. So hopefully soon.
Yeah. Soon.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you. Thank y'all for being a part of it. Good
You're
to
welcome.
see you.
Enjoy your dinner.
You
See you
too.
later.
Bye. All right.